Hi, everyone. My name is Maame, and my topic is the ethical implications of using AI and machine learning in drug development. So thank you, Quinn, for your overview. Um, my topic was inspired by the obviously all the chat GPT noise and all the noise about artificial intelligence and what it can do to help in certain industries and how harmful it could be for certain industries as well. So I wanted to take a look at the ethical implications and how that is affecting regulations in different countries. And narrowed it down specifically to US, thanks to Professor Kuflik, so that I don't go blubbing on and on. So in this presentation, I'll be talking about what my thesis outline, the impact on the pharmaceutical industry, the ethical analysis and regulatory analysis in my findings and conclusions. So for the thesis, a lot of the people who were reading my paper didn't have background in AI or drug development. So I wrote a long overview of artificial intelligence, what it is, machine learning, and also drug development as well, the history of drug developments. Coming from Ghana, West Africa, I went into like details on traditional medications and how drug development was a thing before pharmaceutical companies were a thing. But it was just not structured. And then I spoke about AI approaches and innovations. I also spoke about a case study because I do work at Novartis with CC. So I use Novartis as a case study and kind of highlighted the different areas in which Novartis is using AI to reimagine medicine. Pardon me, I don't know why I kept putting this stroke here every time I wrote AI in this slide, pardon me. And then I spoke about big data as well, and spoke about the principles of ethics, implications, and challenges. I talked about tech and pharma collaborations, ethical use of AI initiatives and commitments. So here we go. So here is like an overview of how AI has developed over the years. This is an image from my paper that kind of showed the birth of AI up till the 2010s, which I'm sure there's a fancier image somewhere showing what is happening post the pandemic in current years. Sorry. Okay. And then I also looked at the different submissions that have been made, drug submissions that has been made with the FDA, US FDA, and how many of them contained some sort of like AI machine learning components. So this here shows the different therapeutic areas. And as we can see, oncology is the highest. And it also shows that from 2016, there was just like one mention, 2017, one mention, and then in 2021, you see that it increases to 132. This part of the diagram also highlights which stage in the drug development that AI was used. So was it used in discovery in the labs, non-clinical development, or clinical development, or post-marketing? We can see that most of it happened in clinical development, which was about 140 trials.
Maame, you're on, there might be presentation view that would make the slides bigger, like the way it is now, your future slides. And if the slide I'm looking at a little smaller, it's a little hard to read some of the print.
All right, let me see what I can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Does this work?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then I spoke about the pharmaceutical approaches and innovations, rare disease, how AI is being used in rare disease, precision medicine, gene therapy, which Quinn just presented on, in drug repurposing. So in rare disease, for instance, I wanted to highlight that it's not only the pharmaceutical companies that are using this AI, patients are also reaching out to AI for support. So during the COVID pandemic, there was a mother who couldn't diagnose, had been trying for several years to get a diagnosis for their child. And out of frustration, when there was a lockdown, she was just playing around with ChatGPT. She entered all the different doctor's notes that she had received over time, line by line. She didn't summarize anything, just went detailed notes, copied and paste everything. And ChatGPT was able to suggest a diagnosis. And with that, she found a Facebook page with people with similar diagnosis. With that, she was able to find a doctor, and they confirmed that the ChatGPT diagnosis was correct. So outside of what the pharmaceutical companies are doing in rare disease and these other areas, patients are also doing the same. Similarly, for drug repurposing, during the pandemic, there was an increase in the use of AI to repurpose drugs that already existed on the market. So this next slide shows an overview of the most the studies that had most the drugs that were used most in studies, during the pandemic. So you would see that obviously the first one was hydroxychloroquine, 44 clinical trials, and there were different other trials that were being conducted as well. Next, I also discussed the different partnerships between pharmaceutical companies and tech companies. And this is very important because this partnership expands across pharma, tech, and even healthcare institutions, where we talk about HIPAA and privacy being an issue, because some of these companies have collaborations with other organizations that do not have are not bound by HIPAA, are not HIPAA regulated. So then patients' data, if they have any like identifiable patient data, or if they have information that has not been anonymized properly, it's easy to share data with someone, and people are able to identify people from that kind of data. Even if it's anonymized and can't be identified, people can't be identified, there's also the issue of consent, which I think Quinn hit on, that sometimes patients do not know the extent to which they are consenting their data to be used. So here is an overview of the different collaborations. And then this exciting one last year, where in Silico Pharmaceuticals, a Hong Kong-based pharmaceutical company, created the first, well, they didn't create, AI created. So this is the first ever drug that has been basically created by, it's not a drug yet, so I would say a molecule that has been created fully by AI, developed, everything was done by AI. But it's interesting to see how the traditional approach takes 1 year and 94 million to 2 years. And in the span of 2 years, you see they have spent 414 million. But then you see what In Silico did here within 1 week to 11 months. And in 11 months, they have spent only 2 million, which can't be compared to 1 million, 1 year, 94 million. And they got in June of 2023, they got the approval to start a phase 2 study, and they were able to dose a patient for the first time in June 2023 with this drug. So they're still in phase 2. It's not a drug yet, so they're still in phase 2. But it was very interesting to see how with AI, they were able to cut costs, but also cut the time significantly. With my research, I noticed that these were the ethical principles that were showing up a lot in all the different pharmaceutical companies. So I noticed in my paper, I had like a table of the different pharmaceutical companies. I think I chose about the top 10 and revenue wise, and the ethical principles that they are following. And this is like public knowledge they put on their website, and I saw that these were the similarities. They were talking about transparency, justice, fairness, responsibility, freedom, trust, sustainability, to mention a few. So I think the biggest ethical concerns that I wanted to highlight was the bias in AI algorithms. People are concerned that AI algorithms basically depend on big data, and if the data is already skewed, then it's a problem. The issue with this is that there's been a lot of biases in data historically, and lack of diversity in the data. So let's say if for so long research was being done on a certain demographic of people, and now we want AI to develop something using that research, already the foundation is skewed. Same thing with transparency and accountability. There's the issue of pharmaceutical companies not wanting to be transparent about the kind of AI or machine learning algorithms they are using, because they don't want other people to steal that information. But unless they are transparent, it's also very difficult to regulate it and to determine if what they are doing is accurate. So there's that dilemma there. And then data privacy, I think I spoke about this briefly a few minutes ago. Some patients do not consent to their data being used like 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line to develop things using AI. Security and AI weaponization is also a very big issue, because there's a pharmaceutical company called Collaborations Pharma, and they basically were able to use AI to reverse. So they had a system in place that was developing molecules, and they were able to use AI to reverse basically the instructions. And within the span of 6 hours, they were able to develop 4,000 molecules, a lot of which were known chemical weapons. And one of which was a very well-known chemical weapon that within if a patient was given like 10 milligrams of, it could kill the patient. So this is what people are concerned about, that AI follows basically instructions and what you fed it. And by using so much data and all it being in the hands of maybe dangerous people, they could weaponize it to create a lot of chemical weapons in the pharmaceutical industry. So impact on the regulatory landscape. FDA is using AI in its approval process, and they're testing some of these things by reviewing like the safety and toxicity information. They are also trying their best. They've launched a couple of guidances and have sought public opinion, or I would say academic opinion as well, on some of their guidances that they would like to bring out. Some of it is they are hoping to regulate drugs that are developed by AI, but also regulate drugs that are AI driven, meaning there's a human part of it, but there's still an AI component. And then also there's been talks about looking into how AI could be regulated the same way as a software is regulated now under software of medical software as a medical device regulation. There's also an intellectual property aspect where there is the argument that about who owns the intellectual property. Is it the pharmaceutical company or is it the AI? So there's that debate out there as well. So my ethical considerations was basically based on what I had seen being done by different governments and also by the different pharmaceutical companies. I suggested that it was important for us to ensure interpretability of the AI tools that are being used, enhancing cybersecurity, ensuring AI is being used to improve science and not weaponizing it, ensuring diversity, respecting patient autonomy, and the list goes on. It's like 11 lists. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. But I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to highlight was that it was important to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable, because now it's become like a trend where everybody feels like they have to say something about AI and post it on their websites. But I think it's important for the regulatory bodies to find a way of holding people accountable and find a way of making sure that they are not just putting on their websites, but they're actually acting it out in their drug developments. So that is a summary of my 200-page thesis. But yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Maame. Fascinating, very important.
I have a question for Maame. And this is a question for you as your personal opinion, not necessarily related to the employer that we may or may not share. My question is really around the idea, and this is something that came up to my attention talking with somebody else last week, about whether or not when AI is used in drug development or discovery, that actually needs to be something that patients or study participants are informed about when they go to take that drug or they are enrolled in a clinical trial. And then second to that, does that potentially differ depending on what level of clinical trial those participants may be enrolling in? So where you might have phase 1, potentially a bit more risky than phase 3 or 4, depending on the population we're talking about. And I thought it was a very interesting sort of esoteric question to think about. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yes, to answer your question, I had like over 30 articles, and one of the articles brought up a good point that answers your question, which was some patients are not in favor of AI at all, but they want to be involved in a clinical trial for whatever reason. So it's important to let them know that AI is being used in the clinical trial, because they might say, no, I don't want AI to have anything to do with my information at all. And then opt out of the clinical trial at the mention of AI. Mostly because people also don't want their data to be used in being creating like a chemical weapon 10 years from now or something like that. And that is what that is kind of like the parts that the article highlighted that I thought was interesting. And I think it answers your question in a way. I think the transparency is important in clinical trial. Patients should know as to if they would understand is the problem, as to if they would understand the level of what could be done with their data, or their again, and biological data as well. That is what is kind of like a question mark in this area, because there would need to be a lot more patient education in layman's terms for them to understand what artificial intelligence is, what is machine learning, what is their data being used for, and also to even understand how that's with or without that the drug can be developed, right? So can the drug be developed without it? Can they be enrolled in a different arm of the clinical trial that does not use AI, or that is the only way of developing the drug? It's even scarier when AI is the only, like, it's doing the discovery development and there's no human aspect to it at all. Patient really need to know. So yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm very concerned about the term artificial intelligence being used so broadly. And so my question for you is whether you felt that drug companies that are utilizing AI are acting in a consistent manner in describing which kind of AI they're using and for what purpose. So static data source, generative AI, decision support, decision substitution for humans. How did you find AI was being characterized?
That's a great question. It's being used in different ways, but then you're right. Everybody is calling everything AI nowadays, and sometimes it's not AI. So that's a big problem as well. They are not characterizing it because, again, I think there's the assumption that people don't have the technical knowledge, or people don't know. That's why my thesis is so long, because I had to spend so much time explaining what AI is. But I think that, and it's interesting because it's being used in different areas, like in data science. Like Novartis had one, and I wish I had the time to show you. It had one slide that said they had 2 million years worth of data. And then there was one that also, and it's on their Instagram, it's still on their Instagram page. So this is not inside information. And it's actually why I did a case study on Novartis. I have a screenshots in my paper. And then they had one that has like, they compared it to filling the Pacific Ocean with little grains of rice. And it's scary when you think of it that way, right? And at the same time, this is a company that's also using AI to develop, partnering with Zipline to use AI to make drugs accessible in remote areas in Ghana, West Africa. Yeah. So Zipline is partner using AI as well. So companies are using AI in different capacities. And you're right, they are not disclosing it, and that is one of the ethical issues, the transparency, because they don't want to give out the cheat sheets. They don't want someone to do what they are already working on. They want it to be in secret, but if it's a secret, it's a black box, and we can't really regulate that, and it's hard. So that is something that regulators need to figure out, like to what extent should they let us know they're using AI.
Thank you.